So we're going to wrap up our coverage over the Eternals, and we pick up with issues number 10, 11, and 12. And when it comes to these three final issues, they're going to be used as a way to wrap everything up when it comes to this series, but lead us perfectly into the Axe Judgment Day crossover event that we are going to cover very soon. And when it comes to the last three issues, there are a few things you need to remember before we jump into the final story arc. So, for example, you have to remember that Thanos is the prime Eternal. He's basically in charge of all Eternals across the board. Number two, when it comes to Thanos, he wants to be part of the Great Machine. The problem is, though, his body is not perfectly correct or perfectly able to join the Great Machine. Now, if you're wondering what is the Great Machine, the Great Machine is built inside the Earth. Technically, it is the Earth. And so if the Great Machine dies, well, the Earth dies. But with that being said, when it comes to Thanos, he wants to be part of the Great Machine, like all Eternals are. Because when they die, the Great Machine is able to bring you back to life. Now, we also learned a dark secret about the Eternals, that when it comes to the Eternals, when they die, the Great Machine is able to bring them back to life, except when the Great Machine does that, a human has to die as a way to bring the Eternals back to life. Now, that secret right there is very important for other reasons, but I did want to mention it just in case, for future books down the road. But when it comes to Thanos, the reason why he's unable to join the Great Machine, because when he was brought back to life by Phastos did something different with the body of Thanos. And so only half of Thanos' body is able to become part of the Great Machine. The other half is not. And that is the big question. Now, right before Phastos was taken by Thanos, Phastos told the good Eternals what they had to do if they want to actually stop Thanos. They also have to find out the dark secret about the Deviants. And when it comes to the Deviants, remember, the Deviants are really more of the main enemies for the Eternals. When the Celestials came to Earth, they made two groups, the Eternals and the Deviants. Now, when it comes to Deviants, at first, they're great people, but the problem is the way they were coded. So later on in their lives, something changed about them. When they turn into monsters, they go crazy and they have to be killed. And of course, that is when you have an Eternal come in and actually kill off the bad Deviants. But getting back to the main point, when it comes to a way to stop Thanos, the Eternals must also figure out the dark secret about the Deviants, because once they do that, they'll be able to stop Thanos. Now, when it comes to the Eternals, they believe the best way to actually figure that out is to go to the base of the Avengers. Now, the reason why you have the Eternals going over to the base of the Avengers is because right now, currently, the Avengers are living inside a celestial body. Matter of fact, the first host. But when it comes to the Eternals, the best way to learn the dark secret of the Deviants is to go to the creator, or one of the creators, which is the Celestials. What the first host is currently on the Earth right now, just dead, and you have the Avengers living inside the dead body of the first host. But they're hoping that they'll be able to find a way to communicate with the first host and to hopefully learn the dark secret of the Deviants. Now, when we jump into today's storyline, we kind of find out that there was a meeting called. And when it came to this meeting, it was really more Cersei saying she wants to meet up with Namor. Now, for Iron Man, that seems very strange. Matter of fact, he's kind of worried or concerned about the Eternals. And the reason why, because most recently, when it came to the Eternals, when the Great Machine was going crazy, well, the Earth began to somewhat fall apart. Now, the Avengers did help out, but the only thing they did was protecting innocent people while the Eternals try to fix the Great Machine. But when that all happened, well, when it came to the Eternals, all they told Tony Stark was the Great Machine went crazy. That's it. We fixed it. Moving on. But in reality, so much more happened. Matter of fact, the Avengers have no idea that Thanos is on Earth right now. But on top of that, Thanos is the prime Eternal. And so for Iron Man, he does find it very weird that when it comes to Cersei, she wants to call a meeting. When it comes to her meeting, she only invited one person, and that is Namor. And for Namor, it's more of, I don't mind. I mean, hey, let me go ahead and see what she wants, and maybe I'll get some fun time out of her. And so while you have Namor and Cersei go on with their meeting, and matter of fact, it's not even a meeting, it's more the two characters saying, hey, I like you, you like me, we should go have some fun in my other room over here, let's go. You have the Avengers just go on with their business. Now, unfortunately, the Avengers nor Namor realized that when it came to Cersei, she dropped an earring, but not really an earring. It's some kind of traveling pod that basically shrinks down people to a small size, easy to carry. And so when it came to her earring, it was a traveling pod. And inside the traveling pod, you have Eternals that was shrunk down. Now, once they leave the shrinking pod, they'll just grow back to regular size. But their main goal is to sneak around the base of the Avengers to hopefully find the mind of the Celestial, to hopefully figure out what is the dark secret of the Deviants. And so we jump over to Thanos and also Drew, who is torturing Phaetos. Now remember, Phaetos was the person that brought Thanos back to life. The problem is Thanos was brought back to life only halfway through, because with him trying to connect to the Great Machine, the problem is only half of him is able to connect to the Great Machine, which means that there's something wrong with the other half of his body. But the question is what? And with Phaetos being the one that had brought Thanos back to life by making him a brand new body, that means Phaetos would know what is wrong with Thanos' body. Now, when it comes to Thanos, he does torture Phaetos so that he can learn what's wrong with his body. But with Phaetos, he's like, no, I'm not going to tell you anything at all, because if I do, it will make you more powerful. Now, when it comes to Thanos, he says, oh, you're going to tell me, because if you don't, I will begin the process of destroying cities left and right, just right here, with you and I in this room. And what he means by that, because back in the one shot called The Eternals Heretic, Thanos met his grandfather, Uranos. And when it came to Uranos, he gave Thanos access to so many different kinds of weapons. And so for Thanos, he's saying, listen, if you don't tell me what I want to know, all I have to do is hit this button. When I do, it's going to be over for a random city across the earth. So what are you going to do? And when it comes to Phaetos, he's like, okay, I have to do it, because when it comes to Eternals, our main goal is to protect the humans. And so he tells Thanos, unfortunately, I don't know why you were not able to become completely part of the Great Machine. And he says, I realize only half of you is eternal. The other half is something else, and I have no idea what. But I do realize that two people will know that actual secret, and that would be your parents. Now, let's not forget, we also learned in a previous video, when it came to the parents of Thanos, they both have been locked away. And so this is Thanos saying, it's about time for me to pay a visit to my mother and father to hopefully learn what dark secret they have about me. And when we jump back over to the Eternals, you have them sneaking around the base of the Avengers. Now, while they're doing that, this is the most perfect time to explain one of the Eternals and her hatred towards the Avengers, and that would be Ajax. See, we learned that Ajax was somebody who had the ability to communicate with Celestials, their creators. The problem was she had lost that ability, and on top of that, the Celestials have not been down to Earth to talk to the Eternals in a very long time. And for Ajax, that really did bother her. When it comes to her hatred towards the Avengers, that was just the starting point, because when it came to the Avengers, Ghost Rider was able to talk to the first host before he had died, and the Avengers had moved inside his body to live there. And so once Ajax had learned that Ghost Rider, a demonic person, was able to communicate with the Celestials, well, she got very upset about that. And she believes that this is a lesson from them, saying that you were wrong, because back in 1 million BCE, she fought the Avengers of the past. And when she fought them, she said they're great people, and I feel like the Avengers should be left alone. But because when it came to Ghost Rider, who was able to communicate with a Celestial, she now feels like the Celestials are telling her, no, the Avengers are not good, the Avengers are bad, and they have to be killed off sooner or later. And that hatred is going to be very important for this storyline. But getting back over to Thanos, we see him now torturing his parents to hopefully learn the dark secret about him from them. Now, we already know, well, we know part of his secret, that when he came to his parents, they weren't able to conceive a child. And so Alar, his father, had to talk to his father, Kronos, to kind of help with the idea of giving them a child, which was Thanos. Now, we have no idea what Kronos did when it came to making Thanos, but when he did, well, there were some problems. And with this story, we're going to learn what are those actual problems. And so for Thanos, he's all like, you will have to tell me sooner or later. There's no way that you are able to take all different kinds of torture. But unfortunately, they can. Now, when it comes to his parents, he tries to use the same thing he did on Phaetos, which is, hey, listen, if you don't tell me, I'll hit this button and a random city on the earth will die just like that. But when it comes to his parents, they don't care, because they realize for the greater good of the universe, if Thanos is unable to learn his actual origin, then everything is going to be okay and better for the entire universe. And so with that, it ticks off Thanos so much, he presses the button. And when he does, bam, a random city is about to be destroyed. And as soon as Thanos pressed that button, well, it did alert Icarus and Athena. And when it comes to Thanos, the button he pressed, what it did was it basically caused a random kind of natural disaster. And that is what he's able to do right now as a way to destroy different places across the earth. Either way, as soon as he pressed that button, you had Icarus and Athena leave. Now, they were on the outside of the Avengers base as a lookout, but again, they got word on what Thanos did, so they had to leave to go handle that problem. Now, getting back over to the Eternals, who are right now in the base of the Avengers, the body of the first host, Celestial, well, they're able to find his mind, the first host. Now, like I said earlier, the first host is dead. He's been dead for a while, but they're still able to talk to his ghost or talk to the pieces of him that are still left behind inside his body. And they're hoping that there is just enough as a way for them to talk to him and to hopefully figure out the dark secret of the deviants. Except when they begin the process of trying to talk to the first host, well, that is when the Avengers are alerted that their base has been invaded by the Eternals. And this is going to lead into the Avengers fighting against the Eternals. And so when we jump into the 11th issue of this series, we pick up with the Avengers trying to figure out what is happening inside their base. They're running to the area where the Eternals are at, because that is where the alarms are going off at. Except when they try to get closer, well, they are confronted by Kingo. Now remember, Kingo is one of the many Eternals, but he's dressed up as somebody else, pretending to be some kind of powerful person across the universe or across dimensions as a way to scare the Avengers, but at the same time keep them busy long enough so that Ajax is able to talk to the first host and figure out what is the big secret about the deviants. Now, I'm gonna tell you right now, the Avengers are not buying anything Kingo is trying to do here. And so they're wondering, what in the world is this man doing? Why is he dressed differently? What in the world is he talking about? And the second chapter also reminds us that when it comes to Icarus and also Athena, they're trying to find the best way to save this random city that Thanos is about to destroy. Oh, I also want to say the Forgotten One is there as well, but he doesn't do much. Either way, you do have our heroes trying to figure out what in the world can they do to protect this actual city. But we also see in this chapter that Thanos is very angry about the idea that his parents are not going to tell him anything about his origin. And so he's wondering what in the world can he do to make them talk. He's actually wondering if there is any way possible to actually make them talk. But then he says, oh, there could be one way to make them talk. And when it comes to the Eternals, who are trying to find the best way to save the people of this town that Thanos has selected to actually destroy, what they're going to do is use a device that Athena has that is just going to move the city over. Literally, it's going to be in a bubble. That bubble is going to float somewhere else, then drop the city far away from Thanos' plan, because what he's going to do was cause a lava explosion to come from underneath the ground to, of course, destroy the entire city. And so as soon as our heroes are able to put the town in a huge bubble and just move it over, then you had the explosion. But luckily, they had just moved the entire town over somewhere else, so nobody died. So that problem right there has been handled. But getting back over to the Avengers, who are dealing with Kinko and all his crazy nonsense, what they actually do is just go ahead and take him down, because they realize that one, he's not some crazy powerful warrior from somewhere else in the universe. He's just trying to distract them long enough so his fellow Eternals are able to pull off their master plan. And so you have the Avengers just go ahead and deal with Kinko. But getting back over to Ajax, we see her getting very upset about the idea that the first host is still not even talking to her, even though she's talking to, well, the ghost of the first host. And that is so crazy. And so for her, she's saying, I don't get it. You'll talk to the Avengers, but not to us, your best creations, the ones who have been basically doing everything you wanted us to do, and you would not talk to us. And so for Ajax, her main goal is to torture the ghost of the first host, because it's just a ghost. What can it do to her? But on top of that, she said we have no choice. We have to learn the big secret about the deviants. But getting back over to Thanos, you have Thanos and Droog going inside the mind of Alar, the father of Thanos. Now, when it came to Alar, let's not forget, he told Thanos, I will never tell you the big secret about your origin. And he was very serious about that. And so Thanos and Droog went inside the mind of Alar, except when they did, Alar still believed that his mind is strong enough to keep Thanos and Droog out. Except you have Thanos say, no, because I am so experienced when it comes to the astral plane. I know how to play with your mind, torture your mind, just long enough to give me the ability to access what I'm looking for. And so he technically did create a hole in the mind of Alar to go deeper into the mind of Alar to finally learn the big secret. But getting back over to the Avengers, they are now confronted by the rest of the Eternals. And you have the rest of the Eternals say, we have to make sure the Avengers are kept busy long enough so that Ajax is able to finally learn what is the big secret about the deviants. And so we do get a few pages of the Avengers fighting against the Eternals. Now, while they're battling, Ajax is still torturing the ghosts, or what remains of the first host. And so while you have our two teams fighting against each other, well, Ajax was able to finally learn the big secret from the first host. And that ends the 11th issue of this series. And so we get into the final chapter of this story. Now, let me tell y'all something. I really did enjoy the final chapter a lot. And what I mean by that, when it comes to the final chapter of this series, well, you have the Avengers fighting against the Eternals. And while you have both sides fighting against one another, well, you have Namor just call in and say, hey, don't worry, I got one of them right now, and there's no way that she'll be a problem. And he's talking about Cersei. And the reason why Cersei is not going to be a problem because her and Namor are getting their freak on. So while you have these two teams fighting against each other, Namor is all like, hey, listen, I'm busy my own self right now with her in his hot tub. And I'm like, yeah, that would be a Namor move actually. But getting back over to Ajax, she finally does learn the big dark secret about the Deviants. And this is where things get a tad bit crazy. See, when it comes to the Deviants, well, we believe that they weren't that important, that they were a failure in creation when it came to the Celestials. And the Eternals' main goal was to make sure the Deviants don't take over the world. And if the Deviants turn into their horrible selves, go ahead and kill them off. Except we kind of find out that is not completely true at all. We kind of find out that apparently the Deviants are really important. They are probably the most important thing out of the whole entire system the Celestials have built for the Earth. So let me explain why the Deviants are so important. See, 4 billion years ago, you had something called necrofluids be released into the Earth. Now, when it came to the necrofluids, well, they would change anything it actually touched. Now, it also became part of the ecosystem as well. This is where things get crazier and where the Deviants come in. Because when it comes to Deviants, they were made by Celestials as well, but they were made in a way to kind of change with the necrofluids. And so if a Deviant would come in contact with necrofluids, they could change or possibly die. Now, the ones who die are not important. It's the ones who survive after becoming in contact with necrofluids. And the reason why? Because they were able to create other lines of life on Earth. And that is going to be very, very important because there is a certain race of humans that are attached to the Deviants, not to the Eternals. And that is very, very huge. And the question is now, what is that race? Because if the Deviants are able to create different kind of races across the world because of their contact with necrofluids, they are really the leaders of the Earth, leading the Earth into an age of marvels. But getting back over to Thanos, this is where we also learn the secret origin of Thanos, which honestly, not a huge secret, but now he knows. See, when it comes to Thanos, the reason why he is unable to become completely part of the Great Machine is because when it came to his parents, let's not forget, once again, they were unable to conceive a child. And so Alar asked his father Kronos to help him create a child, which he did, except when it came to Thanos, he used 2 kinds of DNAs, the Eternals and the Deviants. So when it comes to Thanos, he's half of each, which explains why he is unable to actually join the Great Machine. Now, here's the thing, because when it came to Alar, he tried to make sure that Thanos could still become part of the Great Machine, but apparently he is unable to. And when it came to Phaetos, when he helped bring Thanos back to life in his new body, he added something else into Thanos that's not deviant nor eternal. And the question is what? But either way, what Phaetos used had basically blocked Thanos being able to become part of the Great Machine. But to begin the process of winding everything down, we jump back over to the Avengers and the Eternals. Now, they stop fighting against one another because you have Cersei tell both sides, we have to stop and we have to work together. Because right now, Thanos is getting ready to destroy the entire planet. Because he found out his big, huge origin, he feels like, you know what? What's the point of being here? Let's go ahead and destroy the entire Earth, which he can do thanks to Uranus. Because again, Uranus gave Thanos the keys to the Great Machine to use a weapon that is able to shut down the Great Machine, which means destroy the entire Earth. And so you have our two heroes begin to work together to go after Thanos. Now, the Avengers are very ticked off because, again, they had no idea that two things. One, Thanos was on Earth, but two, Thanos is the Prime Eternal. No one knew that at all when it came to the Avengers. Either way, they agreed to work together and to hopefully stop Thanos. And so our heroes had to go to Titanos. And the reason why, because Thanos went there to get away from the Earth as the Earth begins to, well, fall apart and die. And so as soon as our heroes arrive, it does lead into a battle against Thanos. And like I said, this story here gets wrapped up very quickly so that we are able to dive into, of course, the Axe Judgment Day event. But either way, you have Thanos believe that he has won. But he comes to find out there was a failsafe when it came to Uranus' weapon. And that failsafe is to basically take out the person who would try to use the weapon to destroy the Earth. And so when it came to Thanos, because he tried to use the weapon, the failsafe went off. Now, when it came to the failsafe, it was only activated by one person, Droog, the snake, the Loki of the Eternals. And so even though he has been helping Thanos, he's always looking out for himself. He always has an end goal that is going to help him out at the end. And so when it came to Droog, he's all like, listen, you might try to destroy the planet, but I have plans to stop you down the road. And guess what? Here comes one of my plans. And so just like that, the failsafe goes off, the Earth does not die, and Thanos is also captured as well. But after that, you do have the Eternals and the Avengers have a meeting. And when it comes to their meeting, well, this is the Avengers expressing how angry they are at the Eternals because they feel like they should have known everything that was going on with the Earth, the Great Machine, Thanos being here on Earth, and also being the Prime Eternal, and so many other things. But when it came to the Eternals, they worked just like Wakanda, in a way of saying this was a eternal problem, meaning that only Eternals can handle this problem. Not Avengers, not X-Men or Fantastic Four, not regular humans, just the Eternals. And you have them all leave just like that. But now it shows there's some bad blood between the two teams now because of what the Eternals did not do, which is tell the Avengers what was going on. And this leads into the crazy conclusion of the story, because we actually pick up with Droog right now sitting in the throne. He has become the Prime Eternal. And this is very huge because that means all the different plans that he was doing over time led to this moment right here to give him the ability to become the person in charge of the Eternals. But here comes the crazy part though, guys, because now he realized with him being in charge, he has to do something big and powerful to bring all the Eternals together and show that he can be a great leader. But then you have the Great Machine tell him about an island. And with this island, it's full of deviants. And apparently the Eternals did not hear about this nice new island that's full of deviants. And so when it came to Droog, he zooms in on the island and we kind of find out the island that he is talking about is Krakoa, the home of the mutant nation. And it gets even crazier because remember, they also went to Mars recently. And so because of that, you now have Droog say, so there are two islands, one on Earth and one on Mars. Okay, cool. I think it's time for the Eternals to handle that problem. And this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. Later, guys.